Amigos, how are you doing? I'm back with a new topic with Copilot Studio where we are going to see how to call an agent's topic recursively. This is typically applicable for situations or cases where you need to add more lines to a journal or keep adding more contact addresses to a vendor or customer or employees. By using this trick, you can keep calling the topic with its associated variables be passed on from one call to the next, giving the user a feel as if they are continuing the operations repetitively. Okay, without any more ado, let me show you how could you do this. And before we proceed, requesting you to please like and subscribe to my channel in case if you have already not done so. Okie dokies. To begin with, let me take you to the topic that actually I have created here. It's a very simple topic that says that whenever the user is going to ask for something like create vendor creation through NLP, like prompts like this topic is going to get invoked. So I can keep adding more and more phrases. Say, for example, I can add phrases like, can you add me a vendor? So I can add more and more phrases so that it can become more and more responsive to various kinds of user inputs, various variations of user inputs. So to which the topic is going to ask the user, please help me with vendor code, name, and all these details. And this answer, this response is going to be saved in a variable, local variable known as user response, which obviously is of type string. So to which I am, when I'm getting the user's response of the vendor's details, like the name, legal entity, groups, I am basically passing it on to a prompt. This prompt actually is going to get the user content and get this converted into a JSON. So if I click on view model details, this prompt is will show up. So let this prompt get loaded in the meanwhile. And the content of the prompt shows up like this, where I am giving an instruction. Can you create a JSON from user input, where this user input is a variable called text input of type text, which if you click on this, it will show up. And the JSON should look like this. The result is should be a JSON prompt. And the text input is basically, can you create a vendor with these details? And this is my user input that is going to come from my Copilot Studio topic. And the response is going to be this JSON. And I'm also removing all everything else, like you whenever you are converting something from generative AI, a lot of extra information also come up which we don't want. So I am saying remove all everything else, like single quotes, JSON keywords, or anything extra that comes with the JSON prompt. And so if I click on this test, I would be able to see the result of this execution of this prompt. And as you could see, it's a GPT 4.1 mini, and it's a precise JSON response that is coming up from this prompt. So why I use this as is basically, if I remove this and if I click on test, you'd see that it will show up with a lot of other information, other responses. So based on user input, representation following the structure you provided, there are JSON, there are single quotes, there are, if you need any adjustment, a lot of things are coming, which I really don't want that. So that's why I have said remove all everything else, single quotes and JSON keywords from the response. So if I consequently click on test, so it will pinpoint to a JSON, a perfect JSON response, which I can send back to my Copilot. So I'm not saving, I'm just canceling this and going back to my Copilot and see, let's see what happens next. So I'm just canceling this. So in my prompt, I am getting hold of the JSON response, the JSON body that comes, and parsing that. I need to parse the JSON. I need to find out like the content of my JSON response that comes. I want to take out the user inputs, like, the vendor code, the vendor name, the vendor group, all the details that I need to pass on to create the vendor. Basically, I'm getting inside this prompts response, and I want to parse this JSON prompt. So in order to parse the prompt, I'm calling the parse value. So this is very simple. So if you click on here and click on this variable management, you will see the parse value. This option will come. So I'm just using this parse value, and I am saving the response as a customer JSON response parse in a variable called this. I'm creating a variable, a local variable once again, and this is of type record. And here I am doing what I am basically selecting from sample data. So if I select from sample data, I need to pass on what exactly do I need. So I need to pass on the JSON response. Let me paste the prompts outcome that I'm expecting to flow from my prompt. I'm just pasting the sample JSON here. So if I click on confirm, this is going to be converted the into a schema, JSON schema, that actually the topic is going to need, and it's going to convert, and it's going to take out the value of the user's input into a machine understandable JSON, and we can take it forth for consuming this in to create a vendor. I think the rest part is very simple. Like, if you can understand, I am just passing on the vendor code, vendor name, legal entity, vendor group, currency code. In fact, you can keep on adding more and more inputs to make it flow to your vendor as per as your requirement. Rest all other variables one by one, and I'm pouring them into a flow, which is subsequently going to convert the the user keyed in inputs into a vendor. So, and this are very simple. Like, if you click on this three dots whereby you can select a variable out here, and here in the formula you can just select like this. In the If you just say topic, so let me do it once again for you. Topic dot customer JSON response parsed. So this is the variable which I'm using for the parsed values of the keyed in JSON. And if I select this and I press dot here, this is going to come with what exactly I want to choose. So for example, I am going to choose the vendor group ID. This is what I'm going to select, vendor group ID, and I'm going to hit insert. So this is going to create the vendor group ID as I'm passing the variable through this uh, in this way. So for the all the others inputs, all others, say for example, customer JSON account number, customer JSON vendor organization name, everything I can pass on like this, and I am passing it on into a flow. Which, let me show you, this flow is very simple, whereby it's going to convert. Let this get loaded. Convert the user's input values into a vendor account. So the good thing about Copilot Studio is now you can create the flows right here in Copilot Studio. Instead of going to make.powerautomate.com, you can right away create it here. So I have created a flow known as create vendor from Copilot agent. It's a very, very simple flow. Let me take you to the designer. What is it doing is it's going to take the values the user is going to key in. So when an agent calls the flow, so if you click on this, so these are the inputs. If you remember, this is what I am passing on from my Copilot topic. And here I am calling the Azure Active Directory token, which it is obtaining by calling the login microsoftonline.com slash my tenant id slash oauth2 slash token. And then I'm passing the client id and all the rest of the variables that are written necessary for obtaining the bearer token, which I am passing in it on in my next step by calling the vendors v2 odata entity. And this is where my data area id, vendor account number, group, organization name, which is the vendor name, language id. By default I have hard coded this to as an us english us, but this also you can make it dynamic by passing it on into a flow. And once this is done, I am responding back to the Copilot by sending back the status code, the sending back the status code of the execution of the operation. So the status code for me could be either a success like 200 or 201, or it could be a forbidden like 400 or 500, some internal server error like that. So whatever the status code it it's going to generate, it should be sent back to my Copilot. So if I go back to my topic which I was working on, so this is where I am updating the status and I'm setting this into a variable called a local variable called status. And in the next step I am actually evaluating the value of the status, like if this is equal to 200 or 201, that is a success or an accepted, this is going to go for the next steps. And if it fails, on the else side, I am saying I'm passing a message back to the user saying vendor creation failed. And so if I go down in the true part, like if it is 200 or 201, it will going to blink as vendor creation succeeded. And the next step I am saying, like, would you like to add contact information to the vendor, to the created vendor? So this is a question that I'm sending back to the user, whereby the user is either going to say yes or no. So if it is yes, it is going to ask, it's going to prompt the user to key in the further address details. And if it is no, it is going to stay, I mean, it's going to break the topic right there. It's going to end the conversation right there. So this is how it is going. So if it is true, if it is equal to yes, so this, by the way, this consent, this entity I have created, this is a very simple closed list entity. And this entity is consisting of two options, yes and no. So if this is yes, this is going to go for the rinses, like asking for the user's input for creating the customer's address. And if it is no, so it is going to say a message like this, and thank you for letting me serve you, like that, and it is ending the conversation. If it is yes, it is redirecting the control to another topic. So this topic is doing what? This topic is essentially going to prompt the user the details of the address that it wants to make it flow to the vendor. So what is this? This is another topic. This is another topic, and it's the very beautiful thing. It's the trickiest part of this inter show, where I'm going to show you how you can repetitively call this topic over and again. So in order to call that, just you remember, just to take a look at this, like you see, I'm passing on the data area ID and I'm passing on the vendor code, and I'm passing these two variables out into the vendor address, add vendor address, this topic, and I'm passing these two as input variables into this topic. How am I going to do this? Let me click on this view topic, and it's going to take you to this topic, which it is responsible for creating the address of the vendor. So it's going to take a couple of moments to get it loaded. Yeah, here we are. So the agent chooses this kind of triggering phases like add vendor contact information, and then the topic is going to ask the user, please provide address, city, postal code, and all these details that are needed for creating the address. And it's going to save in a variable known as address, which is a type of string. Then I'm asking another question, like how do you describe this address? As this is, there is a mandatory field while creating a vendor address or a customer address, which is known as the description or name of the address. So that's what I'm asking, the name of the address, and this is saved in yet another variable known as address name. The next step, I am doing something similar as the previous topic. Like I am actually decoding the user's keyed in address as in a form of a JSON. So I can quickly take you to this model, which it is. Let this get loaded in the meanwhile quickly. And this is the prompt. It's a very simple prompt. Once again, what it is doing is that it's extracting the value of the street, postal code, city, and country from this sample customer address variable, which I'm passing on. And it's, 122B Baker Street, London. So, which is nothing but Sherlock Holmes' address from Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's. It's one of the famous address of Sherlock Holmes. If you are familiar with this address, if you're a book reader, you might be remembering that Sherlock Holmes used to use this address many places of its novels. So this is going to convert this user's input into a JSON like this, and the response should be looking like in this fashion. So I'm just canceling and coming back to my topic. And so this is converting the JSON response, and in the likewise in the same way which I described in the previous step where I was creating the vendor, in the same way it's basically parsing the response of the prompt into an address result parse. Like this is the variable name that I have given, and I am calling a Power Automate flow. Actually, I'm calling a flow which is evaluating the vendor that actually I created in the previous step. It is evaluating the vendor's party account. So, every vendor or customer or even the employees, whenever it gets created, it gets associated with a DIR party ID. This party ID, I need to evaluate. I need to find out what is this associated party ID for that, which I am going to flow. I'm going to pass it on for my address creation because this is what I needed for a successful address creation. Let me show you what is this flow doing. It's a very simple flow. I'm going to my flow. I'm taking you to my flows. And if you see, there is a flow which I've created. This flow's name is get vendor party contact. So what is it doing? It's simply obtaining the vendor code and evaluating the corresponding associated party ID for that. So once again, the usual drill of sending out the vendor account and then obtaining the AAD token, Azure Active Directory token. And in the next step, what I'm doing is that I am calling this OData endpoint, as you could see, vendor party account number, vendor party number. I am basically sending, which is equal to, I'm just selecting vendor party account number, and then I am passing the filter number as vendor account number equals to vendor account. And the vendors v2 is the name of the OData, and thereby it is going to do what? It's going to send you back the vendor's associated party account number. So that's what actually I'm doing. I'm selecting the party account number from there, and I'm passing like vendor account number. It's something like querying a vendor table by selecting where vendor account number is equal to the vendor account, this variable which I'm passing on. Okay, so once this is obtained, let me take you back to my topic. This is my party account number which I'm getting here, and this party account number I am sending into my Power Automate, which is it is actually using to create the associated address, the address that I want to add to the vendor. So this is once again another flow, and if I take you to the flow, I've created a flow called the generate vendor address, and it's also a very straightforward flow, which is basically getting hold of the vendor party account number, then the data area ID, the street postal code, and all these details actually it is passing on, and it's generating the Azure Active Directory token once again, and I'm initializing a variable called a random number between 1 to some ones and tens and thousands. Why this is needed? Because this I am generating the address location ID, which is a mandatory field for creating the address. So this address location ID, I am manually, I'm actually on the runtime, I'm generating a random number and I'm passing it on into the next step, which is this step, like description. I'm passing description is the name of the address which I was explaining in the previously, and I'm passing on the party account, street, city, and all other things, and also the location ID, which is this, the variable which I'm using in the previous step as initialized variable. Once this is over, once this is done, I am responding back to my Copilot saying the status code as usual, like it is a success or a failure. And if I take you back to here, there lies the trick. Like if it is the status is equal to true or false, it is actually, you can optionally you can add a condition here. If the status is true, it can say like updated successfully, or if it is false, then you can send out a message back to user saying that address creation failed. Now now comes the main point of our discussion, like how can I repetitively call this flow, this topic. Like if the user wants to add more and more address to the vendor, how can you do that? So what I'm doing is that, do you want to add more address, is asking. If it is yes, if it is yes, then I am calling this topic yet once again by passing on the data area ID and vendor account. So I'm just passing on the same topic back by calling the same topic. And the cycle is going to repeat once again by asking the user to feed in all the details to create the address. And if the user says no, so the conversation is going to end right away. One more thing you must note, like how can you make this topic be receivable by it, how can you make this topic be to make it receive inputs from another topic. So for that you need to go to the variables, and you see there are couple of variables like data area ID and the vendor code. These two variables I have created and I have made them as incoming. So this is the sign of incoming, and I've made them as ticked on. Ticked on means what? Like you are making these topics, these two variable be passed on from another topic, and this is how I am making this topic be receiving these values from its caller. And you can keep on calling and passing this topic again and again, and you can keep on adding addresses to your vendor. So let's test it right away and see like how it performs. So if I say vendor onboarding, pardon my spelling mistake, and I'm saying like this and see what happens. And yeah, it came up with a prompt like this: please help me with the vendor code, name, group, and legal entity and like. So what I am doing is that I'm just responding with something like this: can you create a customer, oops, it should be a vendor with code like this: name is equal to Jennifer Aniston, my favorite actress, and customer group is equal to this. Oh, it should be vendor group actually, and the currency is equal to this for legal entity this. So if I hit enter, let's see what happens. It's going to take a while and should be coming back with the vendor created. It's showing like what are the steps through which it is flowing, and it is going to the prompt flow. After that it should go to the parsing of the prompts response, and finally it will call the flow to create the vendor, and the vendor creation was successful. So it's saying like, would you like to add contact information to the vendor, and saying like yes or no, which is the prompt, which I am getting from my custom entity which I created, which I was showing you. So if I say yes to it, so it will show me something like this. And let me create an address quickly like this. So if I say this is the address of the vendor, let's see what happens now. So it's saying, how do you like to describe the address? I'm saying that it's the home address, and see what happens. It's going to get hold of the party account number for this vendor and then finally call the flow that creates the vendor address. So let's wait. Address updated successfully. Do you want to add the address, which is nothing but a recursive call? So if I say yes, and then it's once again going to call back the vendor address topic once again. So I'm just pasting this, and I'm changing certain values. Like this. I'm changing 95th Street, something like this, and let's hit enter and see what happens. So let's give the name now as office address, and let's see what happens now. So it's still processing, and it's saying, yeah, address updated successfully. Do you want to add more address? So I said no. I'm just calling it a day, and it should be now be able to terminate the conversation. And once it does, it's saying that thanks for letting me serve you. So if I go back to my Dynamics 365 and go back to my address, accounts payable, and check out the vendors which I just created, and let's search for Jennifer Aniston and see what happens. I'm just selecting the name. I'm just filtering by the name, and let's see what happens. Oops, I must have made a spelling mistake somewhere. Or yeah, let me, begins with Jennifer Aniston. Yeah, the Jennifer Aniston, it got created. And let's get inside and see what happens. So let's go down, and you see the addresses. There are two addresses that has got created: home address and office address. And the first one is primary, and the second one is not a primary address. So this is how it goes. You can keep on adding more and more addresses. You think of it like you can create one sales order, and you can keep on adding more and more lines, or you can create one journal header and you can keep on adding more and more invent transfer line or ledger general line, like that. So this could be a recursive call which you can implement by using Copilot. Let me call it a day. Thanks for watching, and please let me know if you need any kind of help or assistance. Here are my social handlers. Please feel free to give me a nudge. And thanks for watching once again. And please don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Take care and much love. Subhashish.